Hi, welcome back to the channel of ExoplanetStudios. If you're new here, I'm currently working on a low-poly style survival game with a focus on exploration and fighting. In my last video I said at some point that I would be working on the combat system next, because it's one of the most important parts of the game, but it turns out that there were many other things to do and I didn't feel ready to start working on such a big project. Instead, I mainly focused on optimizing parts of the map generation and making a system for harvesting. But the first thing I did after the last devlog was to implement a proper main menu. Previously, the main menu was just a canvas where I put all kinds of different buttons to be able to start the game, but with the introduction of multiplayer and all the necessary parts, it wasn't really usable anymore, even for testing. The new main menu is way better structured and relies on different submenus and panels. As with everything else currently in the game, the visuals are nowhere near final, but the structure of the menu is pretty much done. The layout of the actual world selection screen is heavily inspired by Subnautica, because I've always liked the simplicity of this menu. Next up, I continued with the harvesting system. I had a prototype that I made specifically for these 5 seconds in the last video, but I couldn't really use it. The visuals were missing and there was no support for saving in multiplayer. Also, creating the prefabs and the settings necessary for the system to work was a time-consuming process, since you had to manually create prefabs for the trunk, stump and the tree itself. Now I have a much more versatile and expandable system for creating and managing different resource types and sending the different states back and forth between the players. As for the prefab problem, I found a perfect solution. Introducing my new favorite Unity feature, editor windows. They allow you to basically create entire sub-programs inside of Unity to optimize your workflow. In this case, I was able to program an editor window that helps me create and manage all the different map objects. Huge shout out to the YouTuber SubDev, who released his tutorial on editor windows just at the right time. I then continued by adding some much needed animations and particles in the actual harvesting itself. I know 2 main ways of associating gameplay with harvesting. First of all, as somebody pointed out in the comments, there's the rust approach. Glowing spots are the harvestables that basically act as critical hit spots. And then there's the second approach that I personally think fits the game better. Timing. Used for example by Flow Studio in their game Lens Island, the critical hits are provoked by clicking in the right moment instead of at the right place. I prefer this approach because I think that it's easier to build up muscle memory for it, and therefore it won't get annoying in the late game. Another thing I did was to add a chest with a little sign, like I said I would in the last devlog. The model was made by the same friend who also made most of the current character stuff. Also, as you can see, a lot of the visuals have been reworked. I completely removed the old water shader as it didn't fit the art style, and then tried many different shaders, like for example flat shaded ones, but I never really liked the look of flat shaded water, so I settled for the one you can see on screen now. Like everything else, it's still work in progress, but I definitely prefer it over the old one. Also, as stated before, the map generation in general needed some rework. In the last devlog I said that the map generation was pretty much finished and only missed additional features. Well, that was a lie. I had to spend a good portion of this month improving the performance and fixing various bugs. The main problem was that it took way too long to generate big maps with a lot of vertices, because in contrary to other map generators, like for example the map generator from Sebastian Lake I used as a reference, I need a part of the map data to be generated at start to be able to create point of interests like rivers and buildings later on. I fixed this by only generating a very low density map at start and everything else at runtime, something that already worked for the height map but not for the biome map. Another problem was that I used an animation curve to smooth out the terrain just above the water level and create a beach, but it turned out that animation curves are not thread safe, so they caused all kinds of problems in the generation. To fix this problem, I had to create my own version of the animation curve class using Bezier curves and use some fancy math I just removed it. No one needs a beach anyways. The last thing I fixed was that the map textures had hard edges at borders between biomes, a problem that made the borders look buggy and took me way too long to fix. I also started working on the aforementioned function to create what I call global objects, which are basically big spawnable objects like buildings that get generated on a global scale at start. The last thing I did this month was improving the third-person camera for the fighting and starting to implement some attack animations. There aren't any enemies yet, so there really isn't any gameplay associated with it, but it's a start. For the fighting itself, I wanted to be really fast-paced and use the same timing logic as for the harvesting to hopefully get a combo system a bit like in Horizon Forbidden West. Under the last video, many people raised concerns about having to switch the POV quickly, because it could be disorienting when you have to do it in intense situations. This is a valid concern, but I still think I can make it work by limiting the situations where you have to fight. It would be a differentiating factor for the game, something that's kinda missing at the moment. Worst case scenario, I have to redo fighting. Honestly, when I started working on my last devlog, I thought that maybe 400 or 500 people would actually watch it, but as of recording this video, I have almost 13,000 views, which is absolutely insane. Big thanks to everyone supporting my efforts, especially all the awesome people who took the time to share their thoughts down in the comments. I know the music on the transitions was way too loud. Now, the only thing left to say is, like if you liked, dislike if you didn't, join my Discord link in the description, and I'll see you in the next one.